Welcome to Conscious Profits Unfiltered. This is your host, Sebastian Nam.
What's up, fam? Today we hit up a majorly trending topic, Bitcoin. What I loved about my interview with CEO of Swan Bitcoin, Cory Klippsten, is that we really got into the weeds of Bitcoin, but we started with the basics. And what I mean by getting into the weeds through the basics is that Cory did an awesome job of going way deeper into the basic questions themselves. So whether you're a Bitcoin expert or someone that's just interested in understanding what all the hype is about, this episode is for you. Cory Klippsten is the founder and CEO of SwanBitcoin.com. He also serves as an advisor to Unchained Capital, Bitcoin Venture Fund, and Riot Blockchain, and is a partner in Bitcoiner Ventures. As an advisor, he has supported more than $250 million of fundraising since 2016. And as an angel, he has funded 20 plus early stage startups. Before startups, Cory worked for Google, McKinsey, Microsoft, and Morgan Stanley, and he also earned an MBA in finance and entrepreneurship from the University of Chicago. He grew up in SF in Seattle, and he now lives in LA with his wife and daughters, which is where I personally met him. Some of the things you hear in the show, you may not agree with. Some of them, you may not understand, and others may enlighten you in a way that you hadn't experienced before. One way or another, this is a badass episode, and I hope you enjoy it. Cory, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
What's up, Seb? How you doing?
Good,
I'm good.
Man.
Yeah.
Great to have you on. Great to have you on, dude. You know, it's an exciting time because when you got grandmas asking about Bitcoin and shit, you know, that's when things are real. That's when stuff gets to like, oh, this is real mainstream shit, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, we've been here before. It's just back and bigger than ever. So
That's right, man. I also dig it looks like you got some long hair going on, man. I haven't seen you in a minute. Are you hiding some a ponytail?
There would be a ponytail. It's in the man bun here, but this hairdo is called the horse warrior. This is when you like flow down through the steppes of Western China and come down into Anatolia and conquer Constantinople. So this makes the Turkish wifey really happy.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's how you know you got a good wife. That's what she wants.
That's what she wants. Yeah, exactly.
I love that, man. That is epic. Well, I typically don't do this, but I'm going to announce ahead of time, like kind of where this show is going, because there may be some people that know a lot about Bitcoin and they don't necessarily want to go through the basics and the 101 stuff. But then there's people that are kind of getting their feet wet that really want to maybe get a little bit of that extra 101 as they're kind of making decisions to invest. So we're going to probably spend about 15 minutes or so going through the 101 and having you explain our audience a little bit about it. And then we're going to get into some deeper, more fun
What
stuff.
I would say is, because I spend a lot of time talking about Bitcoin, is that even if you think that you know a lot about Bitcoin, stick around and listen to the whole thing, because the analogies and the stories just keep on getting better. You know, Bitcoin is kind of a meme factory, and the way that we tell stories about Bitcoin and place it in historical context and societal context just keeps on getting better and better. So you might enjoy some of what you hear.
I love it. I love that, man. Well, Cory, I start all of my shows asking my guests, when was your last oh shit moment? Whatever comes to mind.
Oh man. I mean, it's probably child related. I got 2 kids, so probably some sort of environmental disaster downstairs. It's like, oh shit, where did she get those markers and why did she have to draw on the wall? That kind of thing.
That's perfect.
But no, one of them keeps on, actually the younger one keeps on getting into glue somehow. So she keeps on gluing things. That's been the latest disaster. She'll glue like a table mat to the table, or you know, a book. Like she glued a bunch of stuff to like the front of our wedding album, which was probably like the most expensive book that I've ever owned.
Oh, man.
But she climbed up on a chair. It was supposed to be out of reach. She climbed up on a chair and started gluing things to the front cover. That's like a glossy, you know, and it's not like pasted on there. It's not replaceable. Like it's part of this thick ass cover from our wedding album. Anyway, yeah. So now it's like sort of covered in like patchwork, ripped off glued paper.
That's definitely an oh shit.
Yeah,
that's definitely an oh shit.
It was definitely an oh shit moment.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just to give a little background, Cory and I know each other because we shared a workspace together. And by saying that, it's just it was really just a badass, trendy co-working space in Santa Monica. I felt like we were living like in a badass bachelor pad or something with super tall ceilings.
It was like the real world startup style or something. It was ridiculous.
It was sick, man. And I got to say, I always heard you be passionate about all of your startup advising projects that you had going on and everything, but I had never heard anybody speak so passionately about Bitcoin until I met you. And it wasn't the first time I heard about Bitcoin, obviously, but you were really that kind of trigger, that little last push that got me to really investigate more into this. And I don't know if you remember, but certain things stick to people in their memories more than others. And to me, one of the things that stuck the most that you said, Cory, was never invest in something that you don't understand its value, that you don't understand why. And because as a lot of people get into Bitcoin, they go into the route of like, oh, crypto. And then they look at all these things and nobody understands what the F is going on anywhere. And so what I did then was I went out and I read this like 50-page dissertation on a technical explanation for Bitcoin for non-technical people. And I started getting into it. And well, long story short, I really kind of got inspired by you and I got really into it. And I'm glad I did. And here we are now. So let's hit that basic 101 question. What the F is Bitcoin?
Yeah, so this is fun. It is the first good money that we've had for humans on this planet. And I'd say the simplest way to think about it is probably what you want a good money to do is you want it to be able to transport value across both time and space. And traditionally, for the recorded history and probably prehistory as well, we've had two kinds of monies that people have used. You've had gold. A lot of people refer to gold as God's money because it was just kind of like here when we got here or whatever. And gold is very good at transporting value across time. It holds its value. You can still buy a suit on Savile Row for an ounce of gold, just like you could 400 years ago. It's really bad transporting value across space. Like it's heavy. It's easy for somebody to take your gold with, guns or fists or whatever. And usually it just ends up in vaults owned by the central bank, which then abuses it by printing out paper slips, allegedly corresponding to the gold, but they always lie and eventually you get inflation. Fiat or paper money, which is the government's money, is actually quite good at transporting value across space. You can send it either digitally or it's, light paper that you can ship on a plane and you can ship billions of dollars to nefarious actors around the world or whatever. It's really bad at transporting value across time. It inflates away, and every single fiat currency in the history of the world has died except for a couple that are still around today. We're in, kind of year 50 right now of the United States' full fiat experiment, and it's going really poorly, as expected. And so with Bitcoin, for the first time, we have money that is excellent at transporting value across both time and space. So it holds its value across time. It's designed to do that. And then it also can be sent, near instantly and near for free across the world over the internet or any other sort of network that would allow you to broadcast transactions on the network. So some basics about the Bitcoin protocol, and that's what we call it, Bitcoin protocol or the Bitcoin network. There are 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist. Each one of those is made up of 100 million Satoshis. So that's like 8 decimal points. So instead of 2 cents per dollar, we have 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. So really the base unit of Bitcoin is actually the Satoshi, and there's 2.1 quadrillion of them, but it's just way catchier to talk about 21 million, which is why it's on the shirt. Wait, that way. There we go. Yeah. Few understand this. That's another common Bitcoin meme. Few understand. Seb understands. So essentially, if you think about it, there's some fun ways to think about this. So we've been around as humans for 300,000 years, which means that for 0.0003% of human history, we've had good money for the last 12 years. And more than 1% of humans on Earth have had good money for like 0.000067% of that time. The last 2 years is when we sort of crossed over where at least 1% of people on the planet actually own even the littlest tiny sliver of a Bitcoin. So it's just super early. What we're in the middle of seeing, and the reason that there's so much volatility and there's so much just sort of excitement and the ebbs and the flows in the Bitcoin market, we've had massive price spikes in 2013, 2017, and then again in this one, 2020, 2021, is essentially just watching in real time the monetization of a new asset that's better at being money than anything else that's come before. And I think it may be a good opportunity to say like where we could be going. So the total addressable market for store of value, which is the first function of money, there are three. There's store of value, there's medium of exchange, there's unit of account. The most important one for essentially figuring out which money is going to win in the money wars and seeing like which currency dominates, it's which one stores value the best. Bitcoin is better at storing value than all of the competition. It's better than gold. It's better than fiat currency. So over time, it should take a large share of the global market for store of value. So what is that? That's $12 trillion for gold. It's $90 trillion for broad money. So that's like all the dollars and pounds and yen, euros out there in the world. It's maybe another 100 trillion for debt, which is used as a store of value. Obviously, some debt is productive, but a lot of it is actually just people with nowhere better to put their money because they believe Ray Dalio when he says cash is trash, because it is. It just inflates away, right? You got stocks and bonds. So stocks, a lot of times, a lot of that is really people looking to store value. It's not because of the earnings of the companies. The S&P 500 price to earnings multiple is more than double the historical mean right now. It means a lot of people are actually using stocks as a store of value instead of actually saying, oh, this right, what I'm paying for this stock is really like the future earnings of the company discounted back at a fair interest rate or a fair hurdle rate back to the present value. You saw Apple stock double in 12 months without their dividend going up at all, and their profits didn't increase at all, right? So you're showing that people are plowing money into Tesla, into Apple, into Google, Facebook, whatever, essentially looking for these tech stocks to be stores of value. Real estate's another one. So a lot of real estate is not for productive use. If you've ever walked on the Strand in Manhattan Beach and noted that 90% of the houses on the front row there are empty, it's because it's just Chinese and Russian guys and gals buying up real estate as a store of value. Same thing with like downtown Vancouver, Chelsea district in London, like a lot of these places around the world, or just your local suburb in any state in the country. A lot of that is not really for productive use. It's basically like buying this thing, hoping that it kind of goes up, hoping that real estate holds its value versus inflation. So I'd say like conservatively, at least 15% of real estate's value globally is actually store of value and not productive use. And it could be as high as 50%. So anyway, if you kind of add these up, art would be another market that would just, basically a lot of that is store of value, not just appreciation of, wow, that's a pretty painting, right? So if you add these up, I'd say conservatively, the total addressable market for store of value is 200 million. And more aggressively, it would be like, 200 trillion. More aggressively, it would be like 400 trillion. So the market that Bitcoin is going after, if you divide those numbers by 21 million Bitcoins, you're basically looking at, an equivalent target market of $10 to $20 million per Bitcoin. And right now we're at 50,000. So essentially what you have to think of is like, what percentage of that market do you think Bitcoin will take over time and over what time frame? And that's how you have to start thinking about, how much of your own portfolio are you comfortable putting into Bitcoin?
All right, Cory, just to go back there a little bit to the basics, like some of the technical basics, Bitcoin, a key part of it is blockchain. So can you explain a little bit of blockchain for dummies and its value in Bitcoin and maybe some other things as well too?
Yeah, so this is, Bitcoin is made up of a few different technologies. So it's really combinatorial creativity that, Satoshi Nakamoto put together to create the Bitcoin network. And a blockchain, which is a technology that's been around for like 40 years, is notoriously slow and inefficient, and essentially has never had a use either before or after Bitcoin, other than for a proof of work blockchain that essentially keeps money from being usurped by state actors or any actors. So it's basically a way to make state-free money. Blockchain outside of Bitcoin is kind of like an airplane wing without an airplane. it doesn't really have anything going on there. And basically the reason that we're still in this weird sort of cycle where people still talk about blockchain is because a bunch of people raised money around Bitcoin theses in 2013 and 2012 in that initial run up in Silicon Valley, and then basically had to look for narratives to keep their companies going. And so a lot of people said, oh, well, I'm not into Bitcoin, but I'm interested in the underlying technology. Well, that underlying technology isn't useful for anything other than state-free money. And that's why you have things like Fidelity having gone through 50 proofs of concept over 4 years, looking for some way to make any sort of ROI out of blockchain without Bitcoin, giving it up completely and shutting it down. You also saw 2 weeks ago, IBM, after many years of having a bunch of people with their reputations hinged to trying to find some productive use for blockchain without Bitcoin, and they basically took that unit to zero as well. So that's actually all just a big marketing scam from Silicon Valley.
So that's in terms of how it affects other areas, but just to understand the basic then of how it comes into play.
The basics with Bitcoin, like it requires like public key cryptography. It requires, SHA-256 and hash functions, a proof of work blockchain, which is basically, kind of the underpinnings of Bitcoin. I could actually offer to you guys, we give away a great book called Inventing Bitcoin by Jan Pritzker. So you can go to swanbitcoin.com/free book and pick that up. It's about a 2-hour listen or read. Absolutely fantastic. And you really will have like a good understanding of what Bitcoin is by the time you're done with that. But at its sort of highest level, it's a way to send e-cash or digital cash, a bearer instrument, from one place on the internet to another without an intermediary, without a trusted third party in the middle. And that is a problem that's been around, or at least it was identified for the first time in 1982, called the Byzantine generals problem. And essentially the next 36 years was a bunch of cryptographers trying to figure out how to solve this computer science problem. It's interesting because, we have in all the sci-fi novels from the, 40s onward, or even, back in, Henry Ford talking about it in the newspaper in 1912, like we always kind of assumed there'd be this state-free money of some kind. And the cryptographers and the sci-fi writers all assumed that it would be built in the internet and that it would exist on the internet. And it just took a while to get there. But now we have it, and everything after that is more or less inevitable.
So a way for someone that doesn't want, or maybe can't grasp that either, a way I would say is just, it makes it really safe. Basically, it makes it so that it's not being duplicated. People think of like maybe it helps with the hacking essentially of, this digital e-cash that you're saying, so that you can't say that, you sent me money and that could be duplicated. So that money is now duplicated. So the blockchain allows for the safety of that to state that this is what happened at this time. And that's confirmed that it happened at that time.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of people refer to it as a time chain as well. In fact, Satoshi called it a time chain a bunch of times. But that is essentially what it is. The problem that got solved is saying like, hey, I'm going to send a message to Sebastian, and we can prove mathematically that he gets that message, that I no longer have that message, and that message was not tampered with in between me and Sebastian.
Exactly.
And if you can do that, you can send value. That message can be value. And so I often say, like, just a little tricky turn of phrase, but like, we've got the internet. I think we're going to look at the first 20 years of the commercial internet as essentially just a stepping stone to get to Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is actually bigger than the internet itself. It's a much more important innovation, but it couldn't exist without the internet. Just like the internet is, as we think of like the internet is more important than FTP, which is like a layer 2 technology on top of internet protocol. But you couldn't have the internet without FTP. It'll be like that. We'll look at this ad-fueled, walled garden, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, internet, where we all felt super creepy and horrible things happened, and they all mined our data, and like we're breaking out of the matrix now and heading into a bright orange future.
I love it, man. Hey guys, I just want to remind you, if you want to find more content like this, you can visit sebastiannaum.com. That's Sebastian, Naum.com. You can also get a ton of other marketing resources from myself and my agencies, ranging from SEO to social media, influencer marketing, branding, web development, and more. Again, that's sebastiannaum.com. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the show. There's this whole thing, Cory, where they're afraid of jumping into investing in Bitcoin because they heard of this concept where, if I lose my password, I could lose it forever. And there's not your keys, not your Bitcoin. And so that comes into play when we start talking about exchanges versus wallets. So if if you're kind of new, you don't really need to have your own wallet. And most people are getting their feet wet in popular exchanges, right? So they're getting their feet wet with now PayPal or your Coinbases or whatever. And of course, you can do that on Swan Bitcoin. And so can you explain a little bit about how people don't necessarily have to go that route and how, for example, Swan can hold that money safely in a trust, and how that works in terms of wallets?
Yeah, sure. So if you want to go a little deeper on this, we spent a lot of time on this. So swanbitcoin.com/wallets will take you through sort of the basics there. But essentially, yeah, you can take self-custody of Bitcoin, and that's what it's designed to do. So Bitcoin has never been hacked. The network has never been hacked, but lots of people holding Bitcoin for other people have run away with the Bitcoin, or have had that Bitcoin stolen from them, and thus from you, the person who gave them your Bitcoin to hold for you.
It's like having a bank where you give your money to, and the bank leaves with your money.
Either the bank leaves with your money, or somebody robs the bank and you're not insured, basically. So that happened a lot in the early days. Mt. Gox being sort of the most famous example. It was the world's biggest Bitcoin exchange in 2012, 2013, and it got hacked, and a lot of people lost a lot of Bitcoin. The technology behind, custody and storage of Bitcoin, it's not the nuclear codes. It is tough, but it's not sort of undoable. So there are actually a lot of good custodians now, and a lot of the exchanges, function as custodians for their clients, and that's fine. We do always recommend, especially anywhere where, like, if you have any worries whatsoever about the government coming for your money one day, or you live in a country where that's actually like a realistic thing, then self-custody is absolutely crucial. We educate people about self-custody. There's also things like collaborative custody or multi-signature custody, where you can essentially contract with a third-party company, and they could hold like one or two of your keys in a multi-signature setup, basically, where you can kind of spread the security across a few different places. We set up Swan to make it super easy to take self-custody, but we encourage people to do that when they are able, and when they feel up to it. And then, if you have a family and, maybe your spouse or your partner isn't quite up to understanding self-custody, then I suggest things like Unchained Capital or Casa, where you can do collaborative custody, and, they work with, trusts and inheritance and things like that. That's what I do for my family. We use collaborative custody, other than a little bit that I like to just kind of play with and stuff like that.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And custody at Swan is totally free, by the way. And so are withdrawals, which is nice.
Got it. And, I was going to ask you why, Bitcoin, why you believe it's the way to go. But to be honest, you've already kind of said that passionately already. Yeah. You've already explained why you believe that. So let me take that a step further, Cory. Why is Bitcoin a conscious currency? How can Bitcoin be used as a force for good? And let me take that a step further, because I've heard you say this in the past. How can Bitcoin help end wars?
Yeah, so most of these wars, these fiat wars of the last, century plus, since we kind of started breaking down the gold standard and created the Federal Reserve, and everybody started printing money like crazy, that is how you were able to finance world wars, and then sort of endless war ever since then, is because you don't have to ask anybody. You can just print money. The US government just prints money, and it doesn't come from the tax base. And we're seeing that now, right? People are questioning. They're saying like, okay, wait, now where is all this money? When did I vote for the tax increase to pay for this stuff? And then you see like Neil Kashkari on 60 Minutes, the Fed board governor from one of the branches, saying like, we can print infinite money, and his eyes get all big and scary, and he ends up on the internet full of memes, right? But that's what's going on, basically. Like, we are all being sort of, they're stealing from us every day by printing money, because it basically causes inflation. It hurts savers. And so it essentially makes you flee the money, because the money doesn't hold value, and then you have to buy speculative assets. You have to go further out on the risk curve, and you have to find somewhere to put your cash. If you don't have excess cash, then you're even more screwed because you literally can never get off the treadmill and you're just stuck. So that's why you see with fiat money, it inherently centralizes wealth, and all of the gains from this money printing pretty much go to the top 0.1% and the 1%. That actually is a real thing in our system. And you can be a University of Chicago MBA grad like me that's, more or less anarcho-capitalist, Austrian economics, pull yourself up from your bootstraps and still recognize that the current system is just completely crony capitalism. And the whole point of society and the media and academia is getting as close as possible to the nexus of power in DC and New York to get close to the banks and the government so that you can be close to the money printer and get it and take your rip on it, take your little slice of it before it gets to everybody else. That's why the most expensive zip codes are now outside of DC, which is ridiculous. Didn't used to be like that.
That's really interesting, man. That's
so yes, it basically, if you can't print the money, you can't fund the wars. The wars are unpopular and people won't vote for them. If we actually had to pay for them overtly through tax increases, we wouldn't fund the wars.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I had never heard that point made that way. It's a really interesting point. I know, how is Bitcoin, and I saw that you guys are one of the guys on your advisory team was posting about this, but how is Bitcoin helping in times of crisis in Venezuela?
Yeah, I mean, it's an outlet. So if you're savvy enough to get a hold of like a way to get Bitcoin and to be able to exchange either bolivars directly for Bitcoin or bolivars into dollars or into Colombian pesos and store some of it in Bitcoin, then you're storing your wealth the same way we are here in the US, and you benefit from an entire globe of people and, machinery running this network and all of the other good things that are going on with Bitcoin. And that's the money that you're choosing to hold instead of your local, trash in the gutter currency.
Gotcha. Yeah. There's I posted a story on my Instagram that I was going to be interviewing an expert on Bitcoin, and somebody, I got several DMs with, people being excited about it. And somebody asked me to ask you about the controversy behind the aspect of mining taking so much energy because of the supercomputers and so on. So how can that be combated in terms of an energy crisis?
Yeah. So if you play out what's likely to happen in the game theory of mining Bitcoin. So this is basically every 10 minutes that all of the transactions that have been started on the Bitcoin network are put into a block and then added to the chain. That's why they call it a blockchain, right? So they kind of hash the transactions and add it to the chain. That's what makes the Bitcoin blockchain. So every 10 minutes, we're just about at block 700,000 right now. So it's been going since early 2009, creating this long blockchain of all these transactions. The incentive to run the network is that every 10 minutes, there's essentially a lottery. And basically all these computers are trying to solve this math problem, which is basically to just find like the solution to a math problem. And you can't game it through any sort of algorithm. It's totally just a brute force. You have to try, 5 quintillion different options on average right now, something like that.
It's just testing. It's like A/B testing, trial and error, basically.
Yeah, you just keep on trying. Try this number. Did that work? No. Try this number. Try this number. And it's 100 times more computing power than the next biggest supercomputer on the planet is being run by the Bitcoin network. And what people are worried about is like, oh well, if there's X number of transactions today, if it has to handle like all the transaction volume of like Visa in the future, well, that's going to take up, the energy of the UK and Spain and France or something like that. So there's a couple of major logical errors there. One is that all of those transactions would have to be on the Bitcoin blockchain. That's obviously false. Not all transactions in dollars are running on the Swift network, which is ridiculously slow and has less capacity than Bitcoin. So essentially you can just swap out a $sign and swap in Bitcoin, just like you could swap in euros or yen, and you can, have centralized companies doing things, just using Bitcoin as the currency, and they just net it out on their internal ledger. And every once in a while they have to settle out with people or with other institutions. And that's the only time you'd have a transaction actually hit the chain. So that's just ludicrous on its face. The second logical fallacy is thinking that we're done, that the base layer is the only layer of the protocol. That would be like saying the internet stopped with internet protocol. Well, we're on layer 7 or 8 of the internet now, as this internet stack keeps on growing. On top of IP, there was, FTP and SFTP and like HTTP and all these different things on top of it. And now we're on level 7 or 8. It's like that now. So layer 2 is basically mainstream now, which is the Lightning Network. And that lets you send transactions of, as small as you want. That's for buying coffee. Like Bitcoin is for buying coffee plantations. The Lightning Network is for buying coffee. So you can send now, a tiny sliver of a Bitcoin completely for free anywhere in the world instantly. You can send a penny instantly for free to somebody in the Philippines if you want to. So that'll just keep on getting better over time, and it's scaling really fast. And then the other thing is with the mining itself is you are basically just converting energy into money. And so your cost is the cost of energy. So the incentive of the miners is to find the cheapest cost of energy possible. They want zero cost energy or negative cost energy. So all of the mining projects that come up are looking for excess hydropower that's not going to anybody. That's the big spike during rainy season. And a lot of the hash power goes to China because they have all this excess hydro. And so they just put it toward Bitcoin mining. Just from the flared natural gas at oil and gas wells around the world. So this is basically saying like there's gas that leaks out when you drill for oil. In any Western country and most Eastern countries, it's illegal to leak that gas into the air. You have to either cap it and like ship it somewhere, or you have to flare it off with a flare stack and essentially burn it. So this is why you always see like flames by oil wells. Mm-hmm. If instead you take that gas, you put it into a generator and you put Bitcoin mining there, and you have an internet connection anywhere in the world, you can mine Bitcoin with that. And you can do that for free because you can split the profits with the oil and gas rig, basically. So this is just exploding. And just the leaked natural gas today is between like 30 and 150 Bitcoin networks.
Wow.
Just the amount of natural gas that's leaking out into the atmosphere from oil and gas operations around the world today. So this idea that like you don't have enough power, it seeks solar. So all these people are setting up solar farms all over the world. It seeks wind. It seeks renewables more than anything. And the trend has been like hardcore moving toward renewables. And so what happens is if you have constant demand for renewable energy because of Bitcoin mining and that industry exploding, what it does is it brings the production cost down the cost curve and accelerates. Because if you can produce more, you're at scale faster, and then you're able to drive down costs for everybody. So then the whole world benefits because of that positive feedback loop of the demand from Bitcoin, which doesn't care about being near the grid, right? You can't do solar in most places because it's not always on, and you need always on power. So then you have this problem with batteries, and you need if you want solar, you need solar near a population center, and you need batteries if you're going to use it at scale because you have to store that power for night. So it ends up being really inefficient and cost inefficient. With Bitcoin, you just mine when you have power and you don't when you don't. So solar is perfect for that. And so Bitcoin is driving down the cost of solar panels because it's this amazing source of demand for that. So really Bitcoin is actually the solution to the climate crisis, if there is one.
Interesting. That's really interesting, man. Cory, why the name Swan?
I'm a big fan of Nassim Taleb, the author. Been a fan of his for 19 years now, since his first book. And he wrote a book called The Black Swan. And a black swan is basically like an unforeseen event that has a massive impact. And a lot of people think they can only be negative, but they can also be dramatically positive. And I think Bitcoin is the biggest black swan in history by far, positive or negative. Very few people were expecting it. And we're seeing the massive impact that it's having. And it's just going to, it's just going to continue to sort of ripple out through the world as people come to understand it and adopt it. So that's where the name came from. And then my co-founder, Jan, our CTO, he really likes the analogy of the other side of Swan, which is like, Bitcoin was once this ugly duckling in its early days, and it was just like used for darknet money and drug deals and stuff like that. And now it's become this beautiful swan. So we kind of use both of them.
I like that, man. Well, Cory, this, my show is about conscious profits, which is about conscious capitalism, conscious money, and conscious leadership. And I think that one of the things for being a conscious leader, you got to look at a win-win-win situation. And so the reason I see you as a conscious leader is because you're essentially doing that, right? You are making sure that all stakeholders involved are benefiting from it. Your advisors, your employees, your team, the people that are using your product, right? That are getting the value from it, the education, the store of value. But also you believe strongly in this being as a force of good to the world. So it's not just you or the people using your product, but also to the world. So I consider you a conscious leader for that reason. And what do you think are 2 traits that a conscious leader has to embody?
Well, I mean, I'm imagining you have a lot of people like running businesses or on sort of like management teams that listen to this. And so I would say like the one thing is really, I always just try to shine the light on other people as much as possible. I grew up playing point guard in basketball, and like I just always try to set people up. And I also just think like it's such a tight line to walk to try to be like the leader and the icon, because most people just want to tear that person down. So there's only a few people that can pull off coming across as like super smart and capable, but also have people like them. There's basically like Elon and like 6 other people that are actually able to do that. And so many people try to be Elon and Steve Jobs when they don't realize like the other 10 million effective leaders, or the other, 100 million effective leaders, are actually just in service of the people that they work for and their customers. And that most of the top leaders are actually more like that. The Jeff Bezos and the Tim Cook and the Bill Gates and like most of these other people, the Warren Buffetts, like that, they're not out there trying to be superstars leading from the front. They just kind of like sit back with the crew and like try to like, keep everybody happy and give people a mission and spread the credit around. And that's guaranteed to succeed. Like if you have a good company, like if you have a good company, good team, good market, good idea, and you're not trying to be a superstar, you'll win. Like, unless you just like naturally, are that freaking superstar and running your company, and you feel totally comfortable, and like that's just your zone, and it makes you totally comfortable to be out front, trying to draw all the attention to yourself. Like, don't bother. You don't have to be a star.
So shine the light, be a point guard, basically give the tools to your team to succeed. Yeah,
I think I always say like, I think chief enablement officer is a lot more apt description of the best CEOs than executive.
I like that, man. I like that a lot. So Cory, how can people get started on with Swan?
Yeah, so we swanbitcoin.com takes a few minutes to sign up. You basically just decide how much you want to pay yourself in Bitcoin, or how much you want to, save like a 401k. Usually think about it as like a percentage of a paycheck or something like that. And you can set it up to buy automatically every day, every week, every month. Our fees are about half of Cash App and about 60 to 80% less than Coinbase. So we're the cheapest in the US for that. We have incredible education. So got a great YouTube channel at youtube.com/swansignal. We have an incredible club on Clubhouse, which you should all check out and download that and make somebody give you an invite. Just got featured in the Wall Street Journal today for that club, which is pretty cool.
Dude, that's sick. Congrats.
Yeah, my first Wall Street Journal quote. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, pretty fun. I don't know, we're active on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn, and easy to find. I'm Cory Klippsten everywhere.
Awesome, man. I love it. Well, I can't let you go without just kind of putting you on the spot and asking you for like a little bit of a guesstimate here, because people listen to podcasts after they've been recorded. So what do you think Bitcoin hits by the end of 2021?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I've been saying like, these things can be really volatile too. So again, I'm going to tell you something very important before I say that, which is the amount of value that someone is willing to store in the Bitcoin protocol is directly correlated to their understanding of Bitcoin. So as you're thinking of investing money in Bitcoin, if you don't also invest in educating yourself about Bitcoin, you'll have weak hands. And what you'll do is what 96% of traders do, which is buy high and sell low. So a lot of people that bought Bitcoin in early 2019, were happy that it was running up as it went from like 3,100 to 13,800 in June of 2019, and it proceeded to crash down to $4,000 or $4,500 in March of 2020. And they freaked out and they sold, during the pandemic. And what's it done since then? It went from $4,000 to 52,000. So 13x since then. So if you buy now, and we just saw a drawdown like 2 weeks ago, it went all the way up to 42 and then back to 28. And then it went from 28 to 52. So like, you just got to really think about understanding Bitcoin, consistently buying. All of the people that have been around Bitcoin for a long time, like 99% of them just buy regularly. They don't try to like time dips. They don't try to, save up a bunch of fiat on the side and like dump it in at once. They don't wait for a pullback. They don't wait for the next bear market. They just buy Bitcoin all the time over the course of many years. Think about it as like a 5 or 10 year thing. By the time you get to like year 3 or 4, you'll already be thinking about passing along your Bitcoin to your grandkids. It's like, it's 7th generation money. We've never had this before.
So what's it going to hit by end of 2021, Cory? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah. I think we're in a bull market, and, I think that will hit, somewhere between 150 and 300K, or maybe a little higher. We'll see, before there's like a massive pullback. But a massive pullback, I don't know what that looks like anymore, because we didn't previously have the world's 2 largest asset managers heavily buying in BlackRock and Fidelity. We didn't previously have the world's 2 best hedge fund managers, publicly into Bitcoin, and Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller. We didn't have the world's richest man buying it for his company's balance sheet, and Elon Musk and Tesla. And we didn't have services, that were Bitcoin only, that were incentivized, like my company, to educate people about Bitcoin. My company's sales, finance, amazing education about Bitcoin. It was so much harder to get this information 5 years ago than it is today. And now there's all these books and all these podcasts and all these people like me. There's 1,000 of me doing a podcast right now in every vertical that you can imagine. They're going on with physicists. They're going on SEO podcasts. They're going on every kind of podcast, because everybody's curious about Bitcoin. They're talking to musicians and rappers and athletes. Like, it's going everywhere.
I love it, man. Well, Cory, thanks for being on this podcast today, brother. We appreciate you, man. And thanks for passing on the knowledge. And I hope people love this and get value and hop on Swan and hop on the train with us.
Yeah. So Seb, we're going to have you on our podcast next.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready? Okay. Because we're going to have you on Swan Lounge, which is our Friday show. So either tomorrow or in the coming weeks, we're going to get you on there. That's more of like our casual, like hangout Bitcoin show, where you're not going to like be intensely questioned, and we kind of just hang out. Sometimes there's alcohol involved. So I don't know.
I got intimidated when you said, I was like, oh shit, I got to prep.
You don't have to prep for that one. Just
right on, man. Well, that's awesome, man. Thanks again, Cory. Thanks so much for being on.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. It takes a lot to put these things together, but I truly love doing it. If you enjoyed this episode or the show in general, and you listen to it on audio podcast, please take some time to give it a review. It would really mean a lot to me. And if you watch the video, please go ahead and just click subscribe and share it with somebody that you think would like it. It would really mean the world to me, and it helps keep the show alive. Visit sebastiannaum.com for more content, and follow me on Instagram at sebnaum. That's SEBNAUM. Thanks again for spending your time with me. I know it is valuable. I hope you have a great rest of the day and week. Till next time.